Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning to you. Thank you for being here with us today on this rainy Monday morning at the Geneva Press Club. We welcome today a delegation of Eelam Tamils, both from the diaspora and from Sri Lanka. This press conference is organized by the International Tamil Eelam Information Center, and its title is Aspirations and Concerns of Tamileelam Tamil. We have people here with us, but we also have people online, and thanks to them for being also online with them. We have here Mr. Vettivelu Ginothan, who is the president of the Tamil Youth Organization of Switzerland. Please be welcome here. We have also here Mr. Dennis Schwartz, who is the spokesperson of the German Kurdish Solidarity Association, and we also have here with us Herr Albert Koolen, who is a Catholic priest worker from Germany. We have three people online, as I said. We have Mrs. Ananda Nadarajah Leeladevi. She's secretary of the Association for Relatives of the Enforced Disappearances North and East Provinces. We have a member of the Parliament of Sri Lanka, member of the Tamil National People's Front, Mr. Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam. Sorry, excuse me for the pronunciation, of course. And we have a last person, which is Mr. Krish Govender. He's the vice chairman of Solidarity Group for Peace and Justice and former co-chairperson of the Law Society of South Africa. Thank you everyone for being here today. And Mr. Herr Albert Koolen, I give you the floor for the rest of the press conference.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Falconier. Also welcome from my part. I like to moderate a little this press conference. This was met under the theme of Aspirations and Concerns of Eelam Tamils. And like we did it already on other occasions, is at the occasion of the 54th session of the Human Rights Council here in Geneva in these days. So I don't like to introduce a little more. I want only to tell you how we like to do this. We want to have from everybody, from each person who is here at the table and also online with us, we want to have a statement about exactly this question, aspiration and concerns, actual concerns of the Eelam Tamils. And then afterwards there's the possibility also to ask questions. So I will start, and first of all, I will welcome again Honorable Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam, MP, Member of Parliament from the Tamil National People's Front, and he's online with us from Colombo. Mr. Ponnambalam, I give you the word for the first statement. If you are now online with us, I cannot see you, but I hope you are here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So,
can I just know how much time I have? My initial comments.
Okay, so we fixed a little the time for the statements, more or less 1 hour altogether. So you can see if there are 6 statements, it's your turn to decide it.
All right, and then I'll be brief. You see, when you look at the conflict in Sri Lanka, as far as the victims, which is the Tamil people, are concerned, our framing of the conflict is one of a struggle against genocide. Now, we are fully aware of the sort of politics behind the term genocide, and we are mindful of that. And despite all of those concerns, our view is that there is no other term to describe what the Tamil people are facing. So this concern with regards to a deliberate attack on the identity of the Tamils as existing as a nation within the island of Sri Lanka started as soon as the British colonial power decided that they were going to hand over power to the people of the island. And unfortunately, when decolonization from the European powers took place, they chose not to leave Sri Lanka in the way in which it was found when the first colonization took place under the Portuguese, which was the existence of three distinct nations and having their own kingdoms. So the Tamil nation was left entirely at the mercy of a numerically larger Sinhala nation. And the Sinhala nation, due to various social, religious considerations, have decided that the island of Sri Lanka should only belong to the Sinhalese. And as a consequence, the fact that the Tamils existed in a matter of fact in the northeast of the island as a nation in itself was a threat to that identity of a Sinhala Buddhist country that Sri Lanka, in their vision, ought to be. And each consecutive government, this is not just one or two governments, every single government has chosen to act very clearly in trying to dismantle the existence of the Tamils as a nation. The nation term I use is a politico-social and legal term. It is a term that the Tamil people have identified themselves with, like in the case of many other nations that have not been recognized or have in fact been recognized as a distinct country in their own right. So the identity of nationhood primarily comes from the fact that you have a distinct language, that you have a distinct territory, that you have a distinct culture, and also that you have an existence that you can seek out through your own economic conditions, a sustainable economic structure to sustain your to sustain the nationhood. And it is these four pillars of nationhood that the Sri Lankan state has been systematically attacking. So the consequences of that attack from 1948 onwards resulted in the Tamil struggle for the recognition and the safeguard of the Tamil nation evolving. The armed struggle, which commenced in the 70s, was primarily due to the Tamil people beginning to realize that the only way in which their existence can be safeguarded was through the taking up of arms as self-defense, as number one, and through the creation of a separate state. Because by the 1970s, the democratic Tamil leadership had consistently tried their level best in trying to find a political solution within a united Sri Lanka without dividing the country on the basis of equality of nations, albeit within a united country. But despite those efforts, the Sinhala Buddhist nationalist project repeatedly rejected those political positions of the Tamil people in wanting to find a solution, and instead accelerated their steps towards dismantling the Tamil nation's existence. Today, after a 30-year war, unfortunately, during the time of the war, many important members of the international community took up the position, quite counterproductively, that the armed struggle of the Tamil people was the problem, and that the Sri Lankan state, dominated by Sinhala Buddhist nationalism, was not the problem, and that if the armed struggle was in some way neutralized, then the Sinhalese and the quote-unquote democratic leadership of the Tamil people can very easily come to a political arrangement. This is what we were told when the entirety of the international community chose to arm the Sri Lankan state and to politically bankroll a counter-insurgency effort of the Sri Lankan state that ultimately ended with the 2009 18th of May Mullawaikal genocide. The genocide of the Mullawaikal took place in the classical sense of lives being deliberately destroyed in whole or in part, with the intention of destroying the Tamil national identity. Right. So that is a classic case of genocide. But the genocide of the Tamil nation, the dismantling of the Tamil nation, commenced in '48 and has been going through right through. Even after the war, it continues. Today's, very clear example is where, despite the international community's attention being drawn on Sri Lanka through various resolutions that have been passed in the Human Rights Council in Geneva, is that the consecutive governments since May 2009 have been acting in a way to culturally change the demography of the Northeast Tamil homeland. The archaeological department is the vanguard of that effort, where they have been going around the entirety of the Northeast, identifying quote-unquote ancient Buddhist worship sites. And before you know it, you have the military that surrounds the area. Hundreds of acres are surrounded. And then you have all of a sudden a Buddhist vihare that is built in the name of restoring an archaeological site that never actually existed at any point. So a new vihara is built where there are absolutely no Buddhists in the area. And then you have the Mahasangha, which is the hierarchy of the Buddhist religious clergy, essentially saying that in the surroundings of such vihare, that only Buddhists can live. So these are classic cases of how deliberately the Sri Lankan state is changing the demography of the Northeast to dismantle the Tamil identity of the Northeast. Then you have various other ways by which they are disenfranchising the Tamils. Lands are grabbed by the military, which is a high-profile issue that most people know about. Then you have the lands that are grabbed by the forest department. People have been displaced due to war for several decades. Soon after the war, when they came back, obviously in their area, the natural vegetation had grown and had become almost a jungle. The people were not allowed to go back into those areas and use their land for farming and various other activities that they used to use it, because the forest department declared it a forest, which meant that it had to be protected. So these are the same with the natural, what they call it, I think they call it natural fauna and fauna protection laws are also used to do the same thing. So if you look at, in every sense of the word, on the question of economy, we had a 30-year war. The Tamil areas of the Northeast was under an economic embargo, a complete economic embargo, which meant that hardly anything could get into the Northeast, because almost everything you could possibly imagine was declared a security concern. And as a result, the economy of the Northeast began to lag behind from the rest of the country. And despite the war finishing, nothing was done to protect the economies of a very, very vulnerable Tamil nation. And they were just simply asked to compete with the rest of the country, which they couldn't do. They were driven into poverty deliberately. And then that pauperization was reinforced by the fact that they were asked to compete with the rest of the country, which was 30 years ahead of them, which obviously they couldn't do. And systematically, conditions were created where there was a population drain. People were forced to leave the country because they couldn't exist, quite honestly. The state was pauperizing them systematically. So if you look at every single pillar of what constitutes the identity of nationhood, has been under attack since May 2009. And it is our view that this reality is not being captured by the Human Rights Council sessions. Most definitely, it is a far cry what is happening in the Human Rights Council, the resolutions that are being passed. On the other hand, what concerns us most is, in fact, the High Commissioner's report that came out just last week. Despite the fact that resolutions have been passed since 2012, and the High Commissioner's office has been reporting as a consequence of those resolutions since 2012, almost a report a year, if not 2 reports a year. And the fact that there has been absolutely no progress on anything to do with those, the resolutions, on the question of accountability, which was the actual sole purpose for the resolution, in fact, being country-specific and being allowed to be passed in the Human Rights Council. The tone of the report that has come out is quite honestly extremely disappointing, because it does not focus on the fact that despite resolutions being passed since 2012, the situation faced by the Tamil people is getting worse. It's getting worse. And today, with the economic crisis that Sri Lanka is facing, the greatest fear is that you have the international community wanting to naturally sort of help Sri Lanka, but are refusing to leverage that help with genuine commitments to the rights of the Tamils, as well as genuine commitments with regards to needing international accountability as being the only way in which the truth and justice can be achieved. So those are my initial comments. I would urge the members of the international community. It's since 2012. It's almost 12 years that the Human Rights Council has been handling Sri Lanka, or has been focusing on Sri Lanka. There can be no doubt that there has been absolutely no progress. Everybody will agree with that. And it is therefore, if the intention of the original resolutions was to have accountability to heinous crimes that took place during the war, then it is quite clear that the Human Rights Council is not the venue through which that accountability can be reached, because the Human Rights Council works on the basis of consent with the respective state, which very clearly the Sri Lankan state is not prepared to give and certainly do. And therefore, the only other way by which accountability can, in fact, be achieved seriously within the UN structure is through a referral of Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court. And it is our fervent hope that the members of the Council and the international community in general, the global civil society, realize this factor and push for a referral of Sri Lanka to the ICC, or at the very least, the creation of a UN ad hoc criminal tribunal to look at the entire history in the way the Sri Lankan state has in fact treated the Tamils in particular, but the minorities in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gajendrakumar. I will very quick, for your first statement, I will very quick give the word now to Mrs. Ananda Nadarajah Leeladevi. She is the secretary of the Association for Relatives of the Enforced Disappearance in the North and East Provinces. I hope she is now with us online.
Yeah. Yes, I am online, but I couldn't get the camera.
Okay. You can start to speak, it's possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can.
Without picture.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. My salutations to all those who are participating in this meeting. Next, we thank the Geneva Press Club for giving us the opportunity to speak about our struggle for justice among you. The violence against Tamils continued in 1958, 1977 and 1983, since the only Sinhala Act was introduced in 1956 with the oppressive racist ideology in this island of Sri Lanka. Although it was called ethnic riots, it was actually ethnic cleansing. During riots, there will be a mutual conflict between the two groups, but here the Sinhalese chased, attacked and burned the Tamils. The Tamils kept running to survive as unarmed. Apart from this, the Sinhalese government also started suppressing the rights of the Tamils. When they brought the decision of grading and discriminated against the Tamil students, the students revolted against it. That became the struggle for the Tamils' right. But the Sinhalese government named it as terrorism and arrested and made to disappear the Tamil youths and started to suppress the struggle for the Tamils' right with the help of the international community. The struggle for our rights won the minds of the Tamil people and gained united support and formed a strong structure. When the Sinhala government, with the help of international countries, carried out ethnic cleansing against the Tamil people by claiming that they were eliminating terrorists. It was carried out with the death of 1.5 million people in Mullivaikal and the disappearance of 20,000 of our loved ones and the maiming of tens of thousands of people. There are those who trusted in the promises of the Sri Lankan government and surrendered to the Sri Lankan army. Without knowing what happened to them, we wandered for justice and were deceived. That is why we started our continuous struggle for justice on 20th February 2017. Initially, the Sinhalese government ignored our protest, but after blocking the A9 road in Kilnochi for about 5 hours during the 100th day of our protest, the then president came forward to talk to us. He accepted our demands and promised to publish the list of those who surrendered. However, he did not keep his promise. On the third interview with the president on 16/10/2017, we knew that no justice would be meted by the Sri Lankan government. We ended the meeting and said to his face that we will ask for justice from the international community. Since then, we have been fighting for justice only from the international community. Our representatives also go to the Geneva conferences and testified. We have met embassy officials and various diplomats and given explanations. According to the UN Resolution 30/1, the OMB law should have been prepared after the conception of the victims. But the Sri Lankan government did not consider the opinion of the victims and created the OMB law with dictatorial tendency and also created the OMB office accordingly. We had proven OMP's ineffectiveness already. Reasons for the rejection of the OMP, which were already sent to various diplomats. It will be forwarded to you in due course. Even after proving OMP's ineffectiveness, the Sinhala government is making maneuvers to buy the poor victims by money. Even in the last International Day of Disappearance, the Sri Lankan government had unleashed a myth to deceive our mothers. The myth is that they have found 15 disappeared and joined them with their respective families and have not disclosed their names for security reasons. This is an utter lie. The OMP, which was said to be created in accordance with the UN Resolution 30/1, had not taken any concrete measures, even a period of 6 years elapsed. We would like to mention that we had mentioned about this ineffective mechanism at the very inception. The countries which did not accept our words are now accepting which we said before. Already 6 years of period had elapsed and 180 eyewitnesses had died and evidence destroyed. The government tells lie that the surrenders had already died in the war. There are no one to question the Sri Lankan government. In the year 2009, when our loved ones surrendered to the Sri Lankan army, there should be an officer in charge for each checkpoint and the name of surrendees were recorded in the entry book. Why those records were not released so far? More than that, the officers in charge for the checkpoints are still alive. If anyone inquire them, they can find out the truth, such as where they took our kids and what did they do. Why the international community trying to investigate the victims instead of investigating the commanders who were in charge for the checkpoints at the time of the surrender? Our loved ones have been made to disappear in a well-planned manner. The Sinhala government is the vayapula for that. Is it right to allow these criminals to investigate and give justice to these crimes? Can we expect justice from the culprits? Now, some countries have come up with another domestic mechanism called TRC to help the government for dragging the period. We know that South Africa, Japan, and Switzerland are related to this. We have also confirmed that we will not accept any domestic mechanism. How can a murderer mete out justice? Finally, a request to the media people who participated and not participated in this meeting. Please bring to light the injustice done to us through your medias in your countries. We are not expecting justice from the killer. Make it clear that we are asking for international justice. Your efforts will definitely help us to get justice. Thanking you on behalf of the relatives of the enforced disappearances in the North and East provinces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leeladevi. Now we can see you for a second. The third statement is for myself, and I will try to make a statement a little I'm not a Tamil, you can see this, but I'm a little the observer of the situation from the Catholic Church since a couple of years. So I will try to give my statement. In the entrance hall of the Jaffna Bishop's residence of the Catholic Church in Jaffna, Jalpanam as it's called in Tamil, hangs a plaque with the photos of 7 priests. Witnesses of faith is written in the middle above it. They are priests from the Catholic Diocese of Jaffna who were murdered by the Sinhalese army during the war against the Tamil people until 2009. They felt solidarity with their Tamil parishes, especially with the people there. Too much solidarity, as the Sinhalese army found and killed them. Or, as in the case of the former headmaster of St. Patrick's College, Francis Joseph, who has been missing since the 18th May of 2009. He was last seen acting as an interpreter because of his knowledge of Sinhala at the handover talks of the LTTE cadres on that day. Presumably, he was also murdered as a troublesome and dangerous eyewitness to the killings of prisoners of war in violation of international law. His family is still trying to get information about his fate from the Sinhalese government in Colombo in vain. Another priest whom I met several years ago in Jaffna has written a small book as an eyewitness about the last days of the war in May 2009. He tells of the ruthless killings of all civilians by the Sinhalese army. Only he and his friends survived because they maintained direct contact with the Vatican and with the United Nations. He himself is still threatened by the military intelligence services today because he is an eyewitness of something that all Sinhalese governments and presidents persistently deny to this day: the physical annihilation of the Tamil people, called genocide in the language of the international community and the United Nations. I myself first came into contact with Tamil refugees in Germany as a Catholic priest in the 1980s. For hours, for days, for weeks, for months, I listened to the narratives of how the Sinhala army repeatedly hunted down Tamil civilians, how churches and hospitals were bombed, where people had fled for fear of the artillery fire and bombs. When I visited their relatives and friends in 2018 in the Veni around Kilinochchi with friends, there was not only a single house, not a single family that did not have children, relatives or girlfriends at casualties of the indiscriminate bombardments by the Sinhala army in the last days and weeks of the war. And according to the Manna Diocese Human Rights Offices, founded by the brave, indomitable late Bishop of Manna, Joseph Razapu, 679 people are still considered missing. The former president Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he is now confronted with an incredible accusation, wanted them declared dead years ago without any further international investigation. Why I say it, incredible accusation. According to the latest research of the BBC's Channel 4, it cannot be ruled out that the then president, together with intelligence agents, instigated the 2019 Easter attacks in Sri Lanka in order to come to power. If it turns out that the attacks, in which at least 253 Catholic Sinhalese Tamils and even tourists were killed, and at least 485 other people were injured, some seriously, then among all these incredible atrocities, there's a new level of criminal action by the Sri Lankan state. A state, a president, does not shy away from staging an act of terror to gain power, does not belong to the 21st century. And it would be also a credible sign also for the Western states not to give any more support to this state until these crimes and the genocide of the Tamil people are cleared up. Credibility is an important word for the enforcement of an ethic and international community of states. But this requires independent principles based on human rights and not geostrategic considerations as to which block of state the small island in the southern tip of India should belong to in future. It seemed equally important to me that the members of the Tamil people at home or in the worldwide diaspora unwaveringly hold up to their own identity and history, that they develop and strengthen a self-confidence, that they keep putting forward their views and demands even against silence and other oppositions. Therefore, the actual bicycle marathon from London across the Western Europe to Geneva is another important project of Tamil self-awareness. Therefore, as a Catholic priest and friend of the Tamil people, I can only support the demands for the 54th session of the Human Rights Council here in Geneva. The genocide of the Tamil people and the end of war in 2009 must finally be dealt up with an international and verifiable investigation. The ongoing creeping genocide, the destruction of Tamil culture and identity, and the displacement of the population swap in the Tamil areas with the contrary to human rights must be stopped. The arbitrary arrest and murder of representatives of Tamil civilian population must end. And the recognition of the Tamil people's right to self-determination must be demanded internationally. These demands are directed at the international community and United Nations, but also to the European Union, which people of Tamil origin have lived for decades and contributed to the prosperity of the community. Thank you very much. So this was my statement. Now we want to give very quick the word to Mr. Krish Govender. He was the former co-chairman of the Law Society of South Africa, and he is the vice chairman of the Solidarity Group for Peace and Justice. And we hope he's also now online, and it would be greater if you can see even his picture. Mr. Krish Govender, you are present at the moment?
Yes, thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you. Much appreciated, and thanks to the Geneva Press Club for giving our organization the opportunity to address it today, and greetings to all our fellow comrades. And we are inspired, Herr Koolen, by your wonderful submission. And we also extend our condolences to the many brave priests who had supported a just struggle. I bring you greetings from South Africa, and I say Vanakkam, Melorum to everybody, and as we say in South Africa, Sanbonani. And I want to quickly try not to repeat what has been said, but talk about the long road to freedom and justice for the Tamil people on this tiny island of Sri Lanka, from an objective perspective here in South Africa, and from my support and involvement with all our Tamil comrades inside Sri Lanka and in the diaspora, in supporting their struggle against this violent and oppressive Sinhalese majority. And we note that this struggle is going to take much longer, and the end does not seem to be anywhere in sight. I want to focus a little more on the role of the United Nations and the United Nations Human Rights Council in their inability in understanding the struggle of the Tamil people in a productive and positive manner. Although their role is recognized and their documents, the prescripts, the charter and covenants all speak very highly about the powerful commitment that the United Nations espouses on paper. But the pathway to freedom and justice has been made very difficult by the mechanisms and the decades-long UN processes that are in place for victims of gross human rights violations and genocide, which they have to endure before they can even see some positive direction in this road towards true liberation. The latest report of the High Commissioner that was issued last week is an example of such a long drawn-out exercise that the victims of gross human rights violations have to embark upon to achieve even the smallest sense of justice and accountability from the perpetrators of gross human rights violence, war crimes, and genocide. Any celebration of this latest report is a celebration of justice delayed, which is therefore justice denied. It must be stated at the outset that the September 2023 report of the High Commissioner is, in the main, with respect, a window dressing exercise of the brutal intransigence of the Sri Lankan government. It papers over the cynicism of the Sri Lankan democratic military regime as it sidesteps the consequences of resolutions of the UNHRC, especially after the genocidal events of 2009. Whilst the report of Commissioner Turk is comprehensive in covering the many aspects of unjust rule towards minorities on the island, especially the Tamil-speaking population, it fails to take any honest steps towards holding those responsible for human rights atrocities and acts of genocide on the island. the plain and diplomatic speak used by the High Commissioner when he states in his report that the Sri Lankan government suffers from, and I quote, an accountability deficit, close quotes. It sounds sweet, but it is nothing more. Accountability deficit are words that he uses as it is the best way to cover up for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by the Sri Lankan regime. The report takes the form of window dressing the consequences of the brutalities of the war and the present day-to-day human rights abuses and violence against a disarmed and defeated minority by enumerating well-known historical facts without the numbers of dead and missing, and recycling them into a longish academic report about a delinquent adolescent. This is what it's like, a schoolmaster talking to children on the island and in the diaspora and saying to them, this Sri Lankan regime is just a brutal thug and a bully. And they've been saying it for over 14 years, since 2009. So the reader of this report is forced into a state of amnesia, and they forget to ask the old questions from the HRC and its parent body, the United Nations. And they should be asking, and this is what the report should be asking, when are the perpetrators of crimes against humanity and gross human rights violations equivalent to genocide going to face the full force of justice under international law? The report of the High Commissioner reads like another roadmap to reconstruction for Germany after the Second World War. That worked for Germany. However, the difference in relation to Sri Lanka is that whereas in Germany after World War II, the defeated German war criminals were arrested, put on trial, found guilty and sentenced. Sadly, in the present context of this report, the war criminals of Sri Lanka are allowed to keep their genocidal victories and their triumphalism. They are also rewarded with international loans and trade benefits from the Western powers and their agencies, which allows them, subject to some small warnings from the High Commissioner in his report, not to continue on their same brutal path of subjugating and suppressing a minority population by everyday acts of harassment, bullying, brutality of defenseless people. Of course, we won't be able to say too much about the report in relation to holding people to account. And we will have to, in this case, repeatedly come back to the UNHRC after a few years with this report and previous reports and go on trying to move the UNHRC and the United Nations forward. It's a progressive step going backwards rather than forward. It must be noted that this present-day Sinhalese majority asserts itself through a Bantustan-style apartheid democracy. This is what we in South Africa will call them, because it accommodates minority interests in a parliament which makes laws and rules for the continued oppression of the same minority, very much the same way that the apartheid government ruled in South Africa. Of course, this qualifies as a democracy, even in a similar style as some Palestinians are granted some limited Israeli citizenship and representation in a Zionist-controlled parliament and given a small portion of their own land to self-govern, thereby ensuring their own enslavement. Now, the Tamil call for self-determination and for a defined area to self-govern is clear and does not fall in the demands that could lead to the same kind of institutionalized control and violence that we see today in Sri Lanka. The real question which arises for all those struggling for a safe and secure Tamil homeland on the island is how can this violent military structured so-called democratic regime on the island be held accountable? The second question is who is going to hold them accountable? And if one reads the report of the High Commissioner and removes the diplomatic style language, it suggests that these very same perpetrators and their accomplices in war crimes and gross human rights violations, etc., would have to help set up mechanisms to put themselves on trial for these crimes. Now, this is how ridiculous the situation comes across. And this, unfortunately, is the upshot of the reports of the High Commissioner and the previous reports that have come out of the UNHRC. And we ask ourselves why in September 2023 we are faced with the same dilemma. The failure by the international agencies, including the United Nations, to hold perpetrators of gross human rights violations around the world to account, except for some easy targeted few, is well known. The reasons for this failure can best be attributed to the ever-growing forces of global, political, economic, and financial corruption, and the promotion of geopolitical, economic, and military interests above the rule of international law and justice. Under this fascist Sinhala Buddhist apartheid regime, which is using the concept of democracy as a guise, the struggle for justice, equality, and freedom in this century for this defenseless and military defeated minority in Tamil Eelam has become exponentially more difficult over each year, especially since the acts of genocide in 2009. This is not what the report of the High Commissioner states. The report is a nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the bad boys of Sri Lanka to not be naughty again and to ensure that they reorganize themselves after the war, the genocide, and the looting of state coffers, which bankrupted the country in 2022. It is hoped that they pay back this gifted loan from the IMF so that they can be also held accountable for this grand theft. What we must also be wary of is the fact that Western economic and political interests are also at stake, which causes these countries in the West to protect such interests, more especially in relation to the growing influence of China and to a certain extent also India. This may explain why the UNHRC does not want to go down the route of appointing a special rapporteur for Sri Lanka specifically to deal comprehensively with the violations of the UN Charter and its conventions, as this might result in a referral to the International Criminal Court. The present report of the High Commissioner steers the UN away from such a direction, and the reasons therefore are obvious, especially the geopolitical and economic interests of the Western countries and the big powers. The report of the Commissioner also covers a lot of ground in relation to socioeconomic justice, education, gender representation, and cultural questions. The process followed by the Commissioner is seemingly that of a tick box method, just ticking the boxes to say, I've covered this, I've covered that, I've covered gender, and so on. It's broadly comprehensive, but to the naive eye, it would look impressive. The reality is that it lacks teeth and does not have any means to hold anyone accountable to build a better society for all on the island. For the report to refer to an accountability deficit is therefore laughable, especially if the parties responsible for such deficit cannot be held truly accountable by the UNHRC or the UN. A serious omission or failure of this report is its inability to look slightly below the surface at the factors that led to the economic bankruptcy of the government in 2022, as this would have required identification of the perpetrators of the looting of state coffers over a period leading up to 2022. Furthermore, the Easter bombings and the conspirators behind these tragic events point to a deeply corrupt and diabolical state of mind of leaders who had previously escaped the politically compromised scrutiny of the UN and the UNHRC after 2009. As a result, these political military leaders pursued their dictatorial and triumphalist style of corrupt leadership with impunity. Thereafter, until their very own fanatical supporters felt the pain of hunger and financial loss and turned on them with mob vengeance. These corrupt leaders escaped with only the loss of some property and seemed to be back in circulation on the island with the usual sense of shamelessness. This was an opportunity lost for the High Commissioner to place a spotlight in his report on these corrupt culprits and call for action against them. But the report merely glosses over these economic woes with some words of advice to whoever. The impact of such state looting would naturally be felt where the monies are withheld for punitive reasons, namely the Tamil provinces. The people in the traditional Tamil provinces as a result suffer more from widespread unemployment, poverty, and inequality under the military's occupation. The youth bear the brunt of this sense of alienation, and the elders have no choice but to endure the impunity of the military forces. The brutal attempts to erode the Tamil culture and the destruction of their temples upon which are rebuilt Buddhist temples are documented, and this practice continues unabated and is not outlawed. These inescapable facts are, of course, mentioned in passing in the report. This is an apartheid Bantu-style style of democracy, as we will describe it from our South African experience. The vetoes of the big five countries in the UN ensures that coordinated international actions and sanctions against such violent regimes is impossible to enforce. However, they do resort nowadays in these times to alternative modes of seeking justice like truth and reconciliation commissions. But we know the cunning level of operations of the Sri Lankan regimes that would turn every truth into a lie. This whole issue and the thirst for a Tamil homeland will never be quenched unless there is one day a new peaceful, prosperous, united island where everyone can live together in harmony, respecting each other's cultures, languages, and religions, and stand firm against any foreign domination. In this regard, the geopolitical strategic interests of India and China are inextricably linked to the future political, economic, and social stability of everyone on the island. This is a vexing matter which the Tamil people and the diaspora will have to engage with if there is going to be a transition to justice on the island. This will also entail an analysis of the strategic military and naval security agendas of both India and China, and the development of a peace, justice, and prosperity program of action for all on the island. The fate of the Tamil people is therefore not quite in their own hands. However, the struggle for freedom and justice and equality will never end for the Tamil people, and we stand in solidarity and in full support of such struggle. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krish Govender. In the fifth statement, we go a little to a more international perspective. Not only the Tamils who are fighting for the independence on this world, but also the Kurdish people. And we are very happy to have invited Dennis Shorts, who is one of the spokespersons of the German Kurdish Solidarity. And we ask him to back him for his statement. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and comrades, looking at the evolution of the political situation in Sri Lanka, it is clear that the continuity of the genocide which culminated in the Muliwaikal massacre in 2009 continues to this day. What is also shocking is that the international community and the United Nations has remained silent about the violence against Tamils perpetrated by the Sinhala state to this day. Even for 146,000 people are still missing today. Even for state expropriations of land are still taking place today. And even for sexualized violence against Tamil women by Sinhalese military is taking place systematically. When it comes to the appropriation of Tamil land in violation of international law, the Sinhalese state is happy to adopt Israel's inhuman settlement policy. Taking all these facts together, it becomes clear that the only way to a free and dignified life for the Tamils can be the establishment of a Tamil state. As the Kurdish community in Europe, we declare our solidarity with the independence efforts of our Tamil friends. We have often taken part in Tamil demonstrations and events in the past. This also applies to the bicycle demo, which takes place twice a year and takes place throughout Europe all the way to Geneva. We visited the town halls there on each stage and spoke to the majors there. Most of them showed great interest in the situation of the Tamils in Sri Lanka. On this occasion, we as Kurdish society made clear that we stand in solidarity with the Tamils. And it's known that the Turkish dictator Erdogan would like to see a Sri Lankan solution to the Kurdish issue, which shows that there are many similarities in the situation of Tamils and Kurds. So we send you our warm greetings and solidarity and thank you for the opportunity to take part at this press conference. And I'm very sorry that my pronouncement of the English language was not so good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. We all know English people, so it's all for us. So, last but not at least, now the last statement of Vettivelu Ginothan. He's the president of the Tamil Youth Organization here in Switzerland. He's the last because of two things. First, he's speaking in French. And the second is he's a little responsible for what will be happened after this press conference. So he can perhaps tell us also one or another word for this. Thank you very much for coming.
Merci à tout le monde. Merci à la Club Suisse de la presse, Geneva Press Club, pour nous avoir fourni la place. Alors, en premier temps, à propos de l'aspiration des Tamils, les Tamils de Eelam Tamil, il y a toujours le génocide en cours. Il y avait, si on commence à regarder, notre aspiration, c'est les Tamil Eelam. Et les Tamils, ils sont occupés avec l'armée dans la région des Tamils. Pour chaque habitant, chaque Tamil qui est présent sur le terrain, il y a un rapport de 1 à 6 des forces militaires. Donc pour chaque personne, il y a 6 militaires qui sont mis en place. Et ça fait partie... contre les droits de l'humain, c'est une occupation forcée des territoires des Tamils. Et si, au niveau de l'aspiration, si on regarde les droits internationaux, nous comme Tamils, on a tous les droits pour obtenir l'indépendance et la justice pour ce qui s'est passé. Parce que on est un peuple avec une langue propre à nous. On a un territoire qui est défini et le territoire, c'est le nord-est de l'île de Sri Lanka. Et en même temps, jusqu'en 2009, à partir de 1983, on a gouverné avec un gouvernement non officiel, mais on a contrôlé cette région et on a pris les décisions. Et les habitants qui ont habité dans la région nord-est, ils ont soutenu pour la majorité la cause d'un Tamil Eelam indépendant. Et si on va faire une statistique après le 2009, on voit qu'au niveau des Tamils, les Tamils qui habitent là, ils soutiennent toujours, mais on n'est plus la majorité. Ça, c'est à cause des génocides qui est passé dans les dernières phases de la guerre civile. Si on a toujours 146 693 disparus, toutes ces personnes ne peuvent pas voter. Et après, il y a aussi un grand nombre de populations tamiles qui est expatriée, qui a quitté la région à cause de la sécurité. Donc c'est aussi pour ça que le pourcentage de la population tamile qui habite là-bas s'est drastiquement diminué. Et si on fait maintenant, on regarde le pourcentage, ça semble que c'est moins, mais c'est moins parce qu'il y a beaucoup moins de personnes qui habitent là-dedans. Et en même temps, le gouvernement, il a amené les forces militaires là-bas, donc ils font des numéros sur le côté des gouvernements des Singalais. Et en même temps, avec les militaires, il y a aussi toutes les familles qui sont regroupées. Donc si on regarde la population, les numéros, les pourcentages, ça semble moins, mais ça ne veut pas dire qu'on est la minorité. C'est parce qu'ils ont imposé aux autres d'aller habiter là-bas pour faire que la population tamile, ça devient une minorité. Et c'est à cause de tout ça que nous, comme population tamile, diaspora tamile internationale, on conduit aussi des manifestations régulières à la Place des Nations à Genève et en même temps aussi dans des autres endroits, comme à l'Union européenne à Bruxelles aussi. Le but de ce type de manifestation, c'est d'obtenir, de faire entendre la voix des Tamouls aux médias internationaux et à la population internationale pour obtenir une justice, surtout au niveau de l'ONU. Parce que nous, on va savoir une justice pour le génocide qui est passé contre les Tamouls. Les justices contre les Tamils, pour les Tamils, ça vient principalement avec une réponse pour le génocide qui est passé. Et le génocide, ce n'est pas passé uniquement dans les dernières phases de la guerre, c'est un génocide qui est en train de passer encore maintenant. Comme ils nous ont déjà dit les narrateurs, les personnes qui ont intervenu avant, l'occupation de terrain, c'est aussi un type de génocide. Augmenter le numéro de militaires et l'occupation de territoires avec la force militaire, c'est aussi un type de justice. Si on regarde, il y a un autre type de génocide qui est en train de passer, où on n'a pas la justice. C'est dans le nord-est, où il y a la majorité des Tamils, il n'y a pas une sensibilisation contre l'abus d'alcool et de drogue. Et si on regarde, actuellement, il y a un grand nombre de drogues qui circulent à l'intérieur de l'île, surtout au nord-est. Ça, c'est parce que toute la sensibilisation, ce n'est pas fait en tamoul. Donc, si la sensibilisation, ce n'est pas fait en tamil, ça, c'est aussi, on peut dire, c'est volontaire et c'est obligé par le gouvernement parce que pour eux, l'important, c'est de sensibiliser la population singalaise pour faire que la population tamile, dans un moyen ou l'autre, ça se détruit à l'intérieur. Donc, c'est pour tout ça que nous, on fait cet après-midi, à partir de 14h, à la Place des Nations, une proteste. Et ça, c'est chaque année, en mars et en septembre. Si vous avez la possibilité de passer, vous êtes bienvenus. Et sinon, de ma côté, c'est tout. Et merci beaucoup encore pour m'avoir donné l'opportunité. Merci.
Thank you very much, Ginothan. I want to repeat it in English, if I understood it well. It's up to 2 o'clock this afternoon from the place Place des Nations, ici à Genève, une manifestation à cause du 54e session de Human Rights Council from the United Nations. So we are now a little more than 1 hour, but although we want to open a little for questions, I don't know if there are any questions. Please.
We have a microphone here for anyone who wants to ask a question. Yes.
Tamil Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam online. Somebody is there from Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam? Yeah?
This is again my question. Everybody from Mr. Gajendrakumar and Krish Govender and Mrs. Leeladevi, you are still present?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So we can also ask our questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Vanakkam. நம்ம வளரி மீடியாவிலேருந்து இந்த கேள்வியை கேட்குறேன். இன்றைக்கு வந்து நல்ல விஷயம் 2 டாபிக் எடுத்துருக்குறீங்க. ஒன்று வந்து தமிழ் ஜெனோசைட் அண்ட் ஜஸ்டிஸ் ப்ரோசஸ், 2வது வந்து ரெஃபரண்டம் ஃபார் தமிழீழம். எல்லோரும் ஜஸ்டிஸை பற்றி தான் கதைச்சினீங்க. எனக்கு வந்து முக்கியமாக வந்து இந்த ரெஃபரண்டம் பொது வாக்கெடுப்பு வந்து வெரி இம்பார்ட்டண்டாக இருக்குது பொலிட்டிக்கல் சொல்யூஷனுக்கு. அப்போ அந்த ரெஃபரண்டத்தை பற்றிய உங்களுடைய பொசிஷன் என்ன, அது இன்றைய இந்த ப்ரெஸ் இந்த மீட்டில் அது என்ன மெசேஜை நீங்கள் சொல்கிறீங்கன்னு நான் எதிர்பார்க்குறேன்.
Is it possible to give a very, very short summary in English for us who cannot speak very well Tamil?
Okay, just... Yeah.
Okay. I think it was a question to you, Mr. Gajendrakumar, so you can answer directly.
எங்களுடைய அமைப்பினுடைய ஒரு சர்வஜன வாக்கெடுப்பு சம்பந்தமாக வந்து எங்களுடைய அமைப்பினுடைய நிலைப்பாடு வந்து 77ஆம் ஆண்டு நடைபெற்ற தேர்தல் வந்து ஒரு சர்வஜன வாக்கெடுப்பாக கூறித்தான் தமிழ் மக்களை வந்து அந்த தேர்தலில் வந்து ஈடுபட சொல்லி கேட்டிருந்தது. அந்த வகையில வந்து தமிழ் மக்கள் 77ஆம் ஆண்டிலேயே மிக தெளிவாக தங்களுடைய அரசியல் நிலைப்பாடு சம்பந்தமாக 77 வந்து தங்களுடைய கருத்தை ஏற்கனவே வெளிப்படுத்தியிருக்கிறார். அந்த சர்வஜன வாக்கெடுப்பாக கருதப்படுகின்ற 77ஆம் ஆண்டு தேர்தலுக்கு பிற்பாடு தமிழ் மக்களுடைய அரசியல் நிலைப்பாட்டில வந்து அந்த தேர்தல் முடிவுகளின் பிரகாரம் வந்து கணிசமான வளர்ச்சி அடைந்தது. அப்படிப்பட்ட ஒரு நிலையிலே வந்து இன்றைக்கு அந்த நிலைப்பாட்டை கேள்விக்குட்படுத்துற கோணத்துல வந்து அடிப்படையிலே
Excuse me, but can I make a very, very short interruption? We have online a lot of international press people, so if possible, that you continue a little in English. Even here are also a lot of Tamil people, it's right, but for the international media.
I can. So I'll answer it in English then.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Instead of being both, yeah. Our organization's position is that in 1977, the Tamil people were asked to approach the general elections as a referendum on the question of what the Tamil people or how the Tamil people view their political status. And as such, the Tamil people voted in the 1977 election very clearly with an overwhelming mandate on the basis that they are understanding that it was a referendum for the creation of a separate state. Now, that position has not in any way, in our view, been impeached. There is nothing that has happened since the 1977 election that has in any way asked the Tamil people to reconsider that position. The only way in which we believe that a referendum again will become relevant is one of two. One is if the Sri Lankan state, as they continuously try to maintain, that the Tamil people's political status or their will to a political status is in fact not what the Tamil people in fact gave in 1977, well, then the Sri Lankan state, we challenge the Sri Lankan state to have a referendum. Obviously, the United Nations has to take over and carry it out, because we have no faith in the Sri Lankan state carrying out free and fair referendum of that nature. Or if the Tamil people, by some chance, in fact, are able to negotiate a solution that is acceptable to them with the Sri Lankan state, then that solution must be put forward to the Tamil people yet again. And the question must be asked whether the Tamil people are willing to settle for this negotiated solution, or do they still prefer the mandate that they gave back in 1977. So those are the only two situations in our view that warrant a referendum. And under those circumstances, our organization would in fact call for a referendum.
Thank you very much. I want to repeat the question, if I understood it well. We are here at Geneva, this is right, for the Human Rights Council, but there's also the other question was already in the Tamil people about the referendum of their independence. And so Mr. Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam answered in a very good way on this question. So there are other questions.
We have one question online from Ramkumar Ravichandrasaram. What is the next step for justice for the victims and accountability of Sri Lankan government, as the Sri Lankan government continues to reject the United Nations Human Rights Resolution and Statement? What is the role of international partners in this?
So this is perhaps also a question to Honorable Gajendrakumar, but perhaps also to Mrs. Ananda Leeladevi. You are present, because if you start to answer and then Mr. Gajendrakumar can answer a second time. Mrs. Leeladevi is still present?
Yes.
She can answer about, very short, about the next steps. Was the question about the next steps? You understood the question? The question was...
Yes. We don't have much knowledge about the UN procedures. Mr. Gajendrakumar Ponnambalam knows that procedures very well. So he will explain the procedures and also the answer. Please, Gajen.
Okay, yeah. And now the MP. The sound, for the moment there's no sound, why?
Yeah, can you hear me?
No, sound is there.
Yeah. I am, just to clarify, I'm not an expert on the UN structure, but I don't think this is a question of structure. I think, as Krish Govender made clear, the resolutions in the Human Rights Council so far has been calling for Sri Lanka to carry out an internal investigation, and has been encouraging for the last 12 years to do so, albeit through a country-specific resolution. The fact that the Sri Lankan government has point-blankly refused to do so, and has done in their capacity everything possible to make sure that such an accountability process does not take place, I think makes it quite clear that there is no will on the part of the government to do it. That is one aspect, the fact that they don't have the will. The second is, I think, a far more fundamental question, is that the Sri Lankan state is an accused party And when you have, and the nature of the conflict that took place is an ethnic conflict, where the accusation is that the Sri Lankan state has been usurped by a numerically larger Sinhala nation, and has in fact usurped it in such a way so that it only acts in the interests of that Sinhala nation, and in fact has been acting to the detriment and a genocidal detriment against the Tamil nation. So when that is the conflict that is at play, and when the High Commissioner, Prince Zaid himself, just before he left office, through his report made it quite clear that the Human Rights Council is something that has to be reconsidered, and in fact must member states and all stakeholders must go beyond the Human Rights Council, because he identified the fact that the Sri Lankan state was just not going to do what had to be done from the resolution point of view. But there was also a question of the question of natural justice, whether an accused party can be asked to investigate itself, particularly because of the nature of the conflict. This is not one government that has been acting against the Tamil people. These are consecutive governments, and over the years, it is in fact the entire state's apparatus. Prince Zaid made the point that no internal inquiry is justifiable because the state structure, due to the conflict, the ethnic conflict over the years, has become so corrupted that it cannot possibly be expected to deliver justice. So under those circumstances, our view is that the Human Rights Council is a dead end. Nothing will come out of it, particularly because the way in which the council operates means that you have to have the consent of the Sri Lankan state if anything meaningful is to happen with regards to accountability. And the only other way by which you can compel an accountability process on a reluctant state is through the referral of Sri Lanka to the ICC. So our view is that within today's UN structure, it is the referral of Sri Lanka to the ICC that is the only credible way in which an accountability, a criminal justice system can in fact be applied to the heinous crimes that took place in Sri Lanka. Much similar to countries like Myanmar, which did not in fact sign up to the Rome Statute, and many other countries that are in fact being investigated by the ICC, despite the fact that they have not signed up to the Rome Statute. So that is our view with regards to how best accountability can in fact be achieved. We have, of course, been saying this since 2012. I think every year, as the year passes, it becomes even more crystal clear that our position with regards to the need for an ICC referral is the only way possible for such accountability to be held. The disappointment, the utter disappointment, is that despite 12 years passing and having more of what we've had over the last 12 years, you have this year's report coming out from the High Commissioner's Office of all, basically playing down the gravity of everything that has happened, not only over the last 12 years with regards to Sri Lanka's complete reluctance, but also with regards to an escalation on the ground with regards to the acts against the Tamils that are taking place, but having no real consequences with regards to that in the report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have arrived to the end of this press conference. Thank you all for being with us today. Madame, Monsieur, nous sommes arrivés au terme de cette conférence de presse. Nos intervenants ici sont à disposition évidemment pour des entretiens individuels après coup. Merci pour votre attention et merci pour votre présence ici ce matin.
Merci aussi for vos statements and for everybody who was participating and making the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.